Here we have a pretty nice example, in fact, a very nice example of a System 9 Sorcerer MPU. And it was not booting when it came to me. So I figured out what was wrong with it. It had a failed RAM chip, 6116, which I have replaced with NV RAM. And it had a failed 6821 in the sound section. So I have the board jumpered with this jumper across W10 now, because the client didn't provide the sound board, and the speech board. That's something I really need to put in the instructions, because it helps me debug the entire system. And I do not have a System 9 daughter card that I can plug in here. So those were the issues with the board. I did remove some chips and test them. It was a little bit of a wild goose chase, because as I was testing the board, the reset section failed, and I have replaced the entire reset section. Some of the parts are still there, but they're really not in circuit, with a modern reset generator and the jumpers as required to do that. I also replaced the filter caps for the incoming 5, 12, and minus 12 power. So let's boot it up, and I want to show you something. It took a split second longer to boot up than most System 9s do. That is because of the reset generator. It just takes a bit longer to assert the reset pulse. And on this particular board, I don't see it very often, but this 7-segment LED has a failed segment B. I've tested everything upstream of that, and it is in fact this. So that should say 0 now. Instead, it kind of says G, I guess. And but that's okay. So we booted up. Displays are toggling between the high score to dates and the score of the last game. This is my universal display tester that I got from Victor, aka Dumbass, on the pin side. And we have the lamp matrix operating correctly. And the only coil that is on right now is coil 16, which is the coin lockout coil. So I'm going to put it into test. And we have display test running. So there would be a sound at 5, but there is no sound at 0, 6, and 7. And that sound at 5 would come from the speech board ROMs. So the lamp matrix is operating correctly. These are the flipper power enable relay circuits. Well, System 9 didn't multiplex any of the coils, so it's just going to go down the red LEDs, then hop over there to the left and do those other 8 LEDs, and then it'll repeat. Now I do have the special ability to test the special solenoids, and now that I think about it, I forgot to fix one of these special solenoids. You can see that this one, solenoid 18 Q71, is inoperative, so I'll have to fix that before this board gets out the door. The next test is switch test. And on Sorcerer, the last switch is switch 45. So there's 45. 44 for good measure. And then you're into the audits. Now I did set it to free play by setting 18 to 0. And I'll... It's a noisy game. So we're back to the beginning, and this board is good to go once I repair this last, let's see, what is it, this is System 11. I'll have to find out which one that is. Now, an easy way to find out which transistor should be driving that is to get a connection to ground, and I have a test clip here that's connected to ground. I can just touch the tab of the transistor, and you can see this is lighting up, third one down. So I'm going to touch the second one. So I've identified the transistor that's at fault, and all I'm doing is grounding the tab like that. I'll do it a couple more times. So I got to find out if this transistor is bad. Looks a little janky to me. Let's get that out of there. On the bench now with the board, and I have my meter set to diode check. And this is the old transistor. And the way you test transistors using the diode check function of your meter in general is black on the center leg, which is connected to the tab, and then red on each flanking leg, and it should read between 0.5 and 0.7. You can see that this transistor is open on both sides, and here I'm going to test the new transistor that I just put in the same way on the board, and that is a correct reading. And that is a correct reading also, so this transistor is good. I knew it was before I put it in there because I tested it before. You can hear the meter make a beep. That means that the meter is detecting a value that's in the diode check range. And it's very useful when you're checking integrated circuits. You don't have to look at the meter, you can just listen for the beep. So I can test an adjacent one just for giggles. Good to go. Now, a lot of people will say replace the pre-drive transistor. I don't generally do that. I think most of the failures are with the tip 102s themselves. You can replace that pre-drive if you want. It's a 15-cent part, but they don't fail as often as, I guess, sometimes folks would think they do. So let's get back to the bench and see if this is the root cause of the problem. Back on the bench with the new tip 102 installed, and I didn't connect everything back up because we only really need to test this circuit, and that's the one that had failed previously. So this board is now 100% good to go. Last thing I'll do is take it outside and wash the solder side down with some Castrol Super Clean to get rid of the solder flux that was necessarily added, even though I use a thing called no clean solder. It leaves a clear residue that I just like to get off these boards. Thanks for sending this one.